pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We can ask you all to please silence your cell phones or turn them off during the meeting. Okay, we're going to go a little out of order tonight, but is there representation from the boys varsity soccer team here?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, look at him. Isn't here tonight, so if someone in the audience wants to grab a picture for him, that would be fantastic.
Everyone smile, say cheese.
Okay.
Thank you.
We just want to say congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
This is a fantastic honor. Thank you for bringing home a sectional title for us. From what I understand, though, you're not actually really giving it to us yet.
We
Is
are,
that accurate?
but we aren't.
Yeah. I heard you're giving it to us and then taking it back for your banquet. Is that right? Okay.
Monday's our banquet.
All right.
so
So maybe
yes.
we'll see it again.
You'll see it.
Well, congratulations, guys. We really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And we thank you for the support and everything that you gave us all year. And my wife and I were talking, you know, most of the teams that were in the finals this year play on turf, you know, and I know turf is a big expensive and everything. You know, small goals would be good too, if we could try to get small goals.
So this was really a pitch here.
But we're always trying to
Spark
edge
some
something.
conversation, right? You guys did an amazing job of bringing this community together too. So thank you for what you did.
And it was nice to see all the support from, you know, the whole community,
Great.
you know, from the Pleasant Beach Hotel on through to the fire department and, you know, you guys being there and the spectators being there. It was nice to see the fans, you know, the bleachers all full, you know. Of course, it's nice when we get home games too. And I told them for the 3 years prior to this, when we won 1 or 2 or 3 games, you know, if we win more games, we get a home game. And this year they did it, and they all worked hard, you know, and I can't say enough about them, you know, they're the greatest guys going. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Speaking captain, you want to say something?
Tim, you
Yes.
have the sectional titles, but you have some individual awards for that a couple of these kids got from the section?
Oh, I was gonna give them out, but yes,
They have their banquet,
yeah.
so I believe
No,
that
I mean,
occurs at that time.
What are you holding?
What are you holding that
Oh, that's the #1 seed we got.
Number 1 seeded team.
Oh, wow.
Yep,
Because you were Wayne County champs as well.
in Wayne County, but I just texted Jared to find out. Have you heard anything on the trophy? I don't know when that comes.
So you guys will be back.
We never win too many of them. Of course, we never win too many
And you got
sectional.
Coach of the Year.
You got Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year. And
Well,
congratulations.
that's because of these guys.
Aw.
Yeah, there.
And these are
I
good
couldn't have
ones.
done it without them. And Jace got Player of the Year for Wayne County. Tyler Cooper got Goalie of the Year for Wayne County. And,
Susie, you got anything
you
to
know,
say?
these, oh,
Okay.
go
We'd
ahead.
like to thank especially Mrs. Devaney for helping us get the student body in at our sectional game and allowing them for free.
Thank you.
And we got some big shoes to fill with all these guys leaving. These guys scored 47 of our 55 goals this year. You know, and we're gonna have a lot of work ahead of us there, but looking forward to it for next year. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Love the support, and I'll give you the trophy
Okay.
Tuesday.
All right, that's a deal. That's a deal. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
I love when kids come in.
So that's it, we're going home.
Great way to start.
All right, so we're gonna move on. Seeing that there's no one for public forum, we'll move on to B, the minutes of the regular meeting of October 12th and the special meeting of November 3rd, B1 and 2. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Allen, and a second by Mr. Dates. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great, thank you. Could I have a motion for C, the financial reports 1 through 3? Going to take those together or separately? Stephanie? All three? All three, okay. I have a motion for C, I'm sorry.
You need a second? for-
Yes, please, 1 through 3.
Yeah.
A second by Mr. Dates. Any questions on this group?
Just a comment, the financials are quite concerning over the deficit spending that's taken place, and with the transfer threshold, that has not been brought to the board. I'm hoping that for the month of October that we'll receive next month, that the deficit spending and the transfer requests will be brought forward to the board and we have a complete packet.
Can we make a note of that?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I am wondering if it's possible, I don't believe that we, unless I missed it, I don't remember it, a central treasurer's report for the end of year for 21-22. So we could see the full year. I wonder if it's possible to get that. 21-22.
It was written that that audit just took place, so I would imagine by December we would receive that.
The single audit, the extracurricular audit, they just did about 2 weeks ago. We
Okay.
haven't seen the final yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Mrs. Pitts, you're up.
Can I approach?
Please.
So I did, I heard there were some questions about the Costa Rica trip. Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me. So here are the questions I received with answers. There are some questions I wasn't able to answer because they're administrative, I think, but I did my best to answer what I could. You're welcome. So, so in the front pages, those are the questions that the board had about the trip. I also added here the protection plan, so the insurance for students. I know that was a concern. We've been traveling with this company before. This trip has actually been in the works for 5 years. Some of these students signed up as 8th graders. They were supposed to go to Spain, and COVID hit. And so they've rolled over, and now they're seniors, and it's very sad that some have graduated and didn't get an opportunity. But the plan is to go. There are no travel restrictions to Costa Rica at this moment, nor coming back to the United States. In that packet too is the original, paperwork I had sent to Dr. Corey when he said he was going to bring it up with the board. So that's there, but also the itinerary for Costa Rica's trip. And then I have the information from Explorica, which is the company I'm using and have used. Oh, and I'll pass this out too if you guys want to look at the last trip to Costa Rica. That's our little yearbook. So I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Is this the piece that you're talking about? Was the
Yes,
original
yes.
that starts with
That
good
was-
afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the piece that I sent over.
So it's like right after the question. So it's behind what says 13 and 14, but it's
Yeah.
a different set.
Yeah.
So I can imagine while we're glancing through this, that maybe there might be some questions afterwards if we don't
Yes,
get
that's
through
what I'm
it all.
thinking.
Right now, I think that up until this point, we've had kind of limited information as far as what was happening.
Yeah.
And
So I'll back history. We took a trip in 2016. It was planned since 2014 to go to Puerto Rico. We went to Puerto Rico in 2016, had 32 students go, very successful. Had 4 adults go, Mr. Gaffney, myself, Christy Smith. We had enough students going to pay for Christy Smith to go. Because that really does come from the students paying for the trip. That's how these travel agents do it, to make the chaperones free. It's included into the student cost. And my husband went. So we had 2 males, 2 females on that trip, and we went with the company Students Love Travel, which I would not use again. I didn't think they were professional. The owner, the people who did the tour were amazing, and I just didn't like the company, I didn't like the owner. So we switched from them to Explorica, who has been great to us. We went with them to Costa Rica, had a phenomenal time, great tour guide, the company treated us very well. When COVID hit, they also treated us very well. They were able to give back, even students who didn't have insurance, they got back the majority of their money, which they didn't have to do. So I was very grateful for that. We've had many of those students graduate. They were supposed to go to Madrid with us and do Spain. So I hope they get to travel in college. And in fact, one of the students worked here as a janitor to raise all of the money on her own to go to Spain, and that's a very expensive trip, and I was so proud of her. And then it fell through, and we couldn't go, but it's just sweet, and it breaks my heart to think about it, but I hope she gets to go in college. So now we have the Costa Rica trip, which was the plan anyway. Every 2 years we do a trip. So it was Spain, then Costa Rica 2 years later, giving the families that buffer of monthly payments, which I know for myself and my husband, it was so much easier to have those monthly payments instead of that big lump sum. I don't deal with the money. The only money I deal with is fundraising, and that basically gets turned around and sent immediately to Explorica as soon as it filters through the school district, and we get a check, we send it out, and that individually goes to each student's account, and I send them, the parents and the student, well, now in Parent Portal, or Parent Square, the information, like, this is what you're expecting. You should check that in your payments. What else do I need to tell you guys?
Question on the fundraising.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately with COVID, we've had, the trip's been delayed.
Yeah.
So we've had fundraising that's been done
Yep.
by students, and then those students have graduated.
Yes.
So what happened to the funds that those students fundraised?
Probably got most of it back to themselves, or they did lose some, maybe. So the students paid for their trip in total, and the trip got canceled. As the fundraisers happened, the money was sent to Explorica, and it went to their payment, their next monthly payment. So for most students, it took care of the fee that they did not get back, most likely. So like some students didn't get, if they had the advanced insurance, they didn't get back $75. They got everything back but $75. So hopefully it went towards that. For students who didn't get the advanced or didn't have insurance, they lost $200. So hopefully it went towards that. But if they raised all their money and they did this and they raised more than $75, they may have gotten some of their fundraising money in their pocket, to be totally honest.
Also like a hard check.
Yeah, yeah. They were supposed to get reimbursed no matter, depending on the way they paid. So if they paid with a credit card, it was supposed to go back to the credit card. But if the credit card wouldn't accept that, they should have gotten a hard check. And nobody complained to me, so I'm assuming everybody got their money back. I think there was one that didn't get it back right away and then did.
Was that through the district or?
No, that's through Explorica. Yeah. So I don't receive any of the payments. That goes directly towards Explorica. Families set that up. Some students did it where they paid at the end. So they pay the $50 deposit, and at the end they pay the lump sum before they buy the plane tickets and everything is paid for. Other people did monthly. That's what we did with our own kids. We did monthly because it was way more affordable that way, or manageable, I guess. Yeah, and so depending on how they set it up, if it was their checking account, the money got deposited right back in their checking account.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Any other questions I can?
Sarah, I'm on
Yeah.
the page where it says, as of now, based on our 14 students, you got 14?
We now have 17.
Okay, that's what I was gonna, whether
Yeah, we
the
had
door's
14.
been open for more.
Yes, December 9th is the cutoff date. So we never closed it. Explorica does, though, when we did this year's out, it was cheaper. and they also had a $200 like promo code, and then it became a $150 by this date, and then a $100, and then a $75, and down to no promo code, and oh, you have to sign up by this date or the price goes up. So later you signed up, the more it was. So everybody's, maybe paying a different price of that.
Just based on their time.
Just based on their timing, yes.
But there is an opportunity, that it's nice to hear that there's 17 now.
Yes, there is.
So, based on that, when I'm reading this paragraph, so, does that allow for, because on the line you said, we'll have to remove a chaperone or nurse for the trip. You can't based
Yes,
on
when we had
numbers?
14, yes, we had to remove somebody, so it was just gonna be Rich and I. So we had a male for the students to go to, if they felt more comfortable with somebody who identifies as male and a female. Now we're bringing Mrs. Hurlbutt. Chelsea Hurlbutt's gonna come. She's been wanting to come for a while, and she's great because she knows everybody. If we could get 3 more students and hit 20, I usually, if we can hit into the 20s, I like to bring a nurse. It just makes me feel more confident to have a nurse on staff too. This district legally would have to pay for a nurse if we had somebody going with medical needs, but we don't have that situation right now. So it's just the 3 of us right now, which is fine. What we do is we have the chaperones, we stay together as a full group. The only time we really use the dividing of groups and chaperones is when we're in the airport. And it becomes a real quick, like, okay, you're Mr. Pitts's, you're Mrs. Hurlbutt's, and you're Mrs. Pitt's kids. And when we have to move, get with your chaperone, and once the chaperone has everybody hands up, because they may have, 7 kids to contend with. And so their hand goes up, and that way we know head count, because otherwise it's like counting squirrels, as they're moving around and talking, and they're not necessarily knowing that they have to just stand still. So I don't want to miss anybody. Especially in Delta, when we switch to international, we have to get on a tram to go from the just regular airlines to the international. You get on a tram and go somewhere. So I want to make sure no child is left behind. So the chaperones are very helpful in that respect. Otherwise, we're on a private bus all the time with the trip. So, and we have a tour guide 24/7, so it's almost like a chaperone. And the tour guides have been amazing. We've had students lose stuff, need medical stuff from the stores, and they've gone and got it while we were doing an activity. So we've been very, very, we've lucked out really well.
I've only had a chance to just briefly look through this. What are some of the educational highlights of the trip?
Okay, so the Costa Rica trip is a very active one. We do this particular trip, we're going to a pineapple plantation. We do the rainforest. We go visit a school. We're going to an animal sanctuary to help out there. Of course, there's the cultural aspect and just that stuff in general, and having to speak Spanish when you order, they're going to order smoothies at places and stuff like that. We're going ziplining, so there's that physicality and ziplining through the tropical rainforest. Hanging bridges. There's the hot water springs. We go on a big boat, a catamaran. And there's slides and everything, but they have to eat they're eating Costa Rican food that's prepared on the boat. So there's a lot of the learning of stepping outside their comfort zone, which is the thing that the parents and the students come back to me and tell me they're so happy they did. Because, in fact, today we had a field trip to SUNY Oswego, and we were listening to people talk about the study abroad program. And the students had said to me, a couple of the students, the juniors had said to me, I'm just so excited, I want to travel abroad. I want to do this. And I said, well, the Costa Rica trip is going to help you feel, because sometimes we feel scared to do those things, to step outside our comfort zone. And even when you do it with, your people, your friends, and, you have adults there, you realize, I can do this. Just because the adults were here, just because my friends were here, it made me feel comfortable enough to take that first step. But I can do this. And so what I find is a lot of my students, after they've gone on the trip, their families come back and tell me, oh yeah, they're traveling. They're going and they're learning about other cultures, and they're going different places, and they're not afraid anymore to do those things. Whereas sometimes I think myself even felt a little uncomfortable to travel because it wasn't, my friends aren't going, what am I gonna do? And so when you build up that fearlessness that I'm mature enough to do this, it opens a lot of opportunities. So
Particularly coming from this tiny little
Mhm. Yep, and they love the international students, so that even is another thing that makes them go, I want to travel, like I want to see more of just and bring back their gifts that they have taken on, bring it back to our community. Like learn about other cultures and bring back what you've learned and what you can bring to us, those gifts. So I love it, I love
There's a
it.
lot of science too. And
Yes, there is a lot of science.
Mini tours and with guides about the habitat
Yeah.
and
The biology of it
biology
all,
of it.
the animals, the
Yeah.
plants, it's so
even
amazing.
those are usually guided and they are showing you the different animals and ecosystems and.
Very cool.
Yeah, because I think Explorica even does, I think they bill it as a science trip. I don't even think they bill it so much as a language trip. I think they bill it as like, science students come on this and don't worry if you don't know enough Spanish, you're gonna be okay, kind of thing. You have a tour guide. Any other questions I could answer? I know that's a lot to look through.
I'm sure if we have any, we can.
Yeah, just email me or
document
call me
stuff.
and I'd be happy to.
I have one quick
Yeah,
question.
please.
So can you just tell us, because I know we discussed this before, how are the students selected for this trip? And if the answer's
They
in this
choose.
paper, I just have.
No, they
Okay.
choose. So I open it up to my high schoolers.
So do you have to be in a Spanish
Yes,
class?
you have to be in Spanish class
Okay.
because my main concern is you're going to have some free time. I don't want you lost and not feeling like you can talk to anybody. You need to know enough Spanish and be mature enough for safety reasons to ask for directions. And we're very strict about, like, you are not by yourself. Like, you need to stay together. Like, even in the United States, you need to stay together. So I want them to be high schoolers. This is the first time I've opened it to ninth graders, but COVID really did a job on the language program, I'll be honest. So we only had 14 at the beginning of the year, so I offered it up to the ninth graders too. So normally
Okay.
I prefer not to take ninth graders. I take juniors, sophomores, and seniors on the trip because I feel like they know better. But
So currently in a Spanish class,
Currently in
I'm
a
assuming
Spanish class.
academically eligible, all of
Yes,
that kind of stuff, and under your
definitely.
evaluation.
Yep.
Okay.
And in there, I do have our schools, like we use it for the senior class too, for the senior trip, but the travel form. But I do have some tweaks in there because of being in another country. Like one of the things Explorica said is if a student, and this would never be our kids, I hope, but they did have a situation where a student had to go home from Europe. And the parents had to pay for it because the student was just being, like, they were gonna get arrested. It was one of those situations, and they said, listen, your choice is you either take your kid home or this child will probably, we're gonna get the authorities involved and
Okay.
you're gonna have to. So with that, there is some additions because we don't, on
No,
our
that's good to know, we
senior
just weren't
trip,
sure of the
so.
process, and I just wanna say that I think part of the reason why the board had the questions is because unless this happened maybe without someone remembering or
Yeah.
several years ago, I don't think we've passed a resolution to approve this trip.
No,
So it
probably
was-
not. I
so-
think there was paperwork sent a few years back when it was probably Spain, and that was probably during COVID, I think. But
Okay.
I'm not even 100% certain because I wasn't invited.
No,
But it was COVID, so who knows?
Well, this kind of helps us take some of the guesswork out of it, so
Yeah.
I can assume
Yeah.
that we'll be seeing a resolution at some point
Okay.
to approve this trip.
As soon as possible.
I just have one question real quick.
Yeah,
please. Back to the original
Yeah.
information that was sent. At the time, there was 14 students.
Yes.
And the school nurse was requested to go at that point. But
Yes.
did you say that it's not going to be
Um,
necessary unless?
It's not
trained?
necessary. Back then, we did have a student who, we had two actually, that were thinking about going. And we would have because of their health needs, we
Okay.
would have needed a nurse.
Okay.
I think
Yes.
the feeling is Chelsea and I, or, well.
No,
Chelsea,
most of the
but-
students, yeah.
Well, I think it's more of a first aid CPR.
Yeah.
Where both coaches
Yeah.
Okay.
have all of that training.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm a nurse or a medical,
Yeah.
but if
But
there isn't
CPR is
a
something.
specific medical.
So even
student,
the,
something came up.
Yeah.
you make me think, because you mentioned, if they run out of medication, so somebody keeps a hold of the medication, is there some way? shape, or form?
No. Okay, so that is, we have a medical form from the school, and and the parents get that form. The student gets the form, take home to their parents, and we ask the parents, fill it out with everything possible that you can even think of, like something for the stomach, something if they get the flu, something if they have a headache or cramps or, whatever they might possibly need. and have the doctor put self-administered. So the students have to bring brand new bottles. We check their stuff, and everything has to be sealed, brand new bottles. This way, the student is not getting up in the middle of the night, wandering the hotel, trying to find me because I have their Tylenol. I want them, because I know myself, if I didn't feel good, I'm not getting up to go find my teacher, to go, you know, feeling uncomfortable or just not feeling good, not wanting to get out of bed. So we want the students to be able to take it as needed. We trust them with that. So, and if the doctors and the families trust them, you know, I feel confident they're not going to abuse that.
No, that, I mean, you explained it well,
Yes.
giving it sealed, and I hope that.
Yeah, it's gotta be brand new.
The parents all understand that if there's a faux pas somehow, that they are fully responsible on getting over there.
Yes.
It's not like driving to Boston.
No,
No.
no.
At
it's
the
serious.
meeting that we'll
Yeah.
have shortly here, the parent meeting, we make that very clear and give them a couple of examples. You know, like kids trying to get tattoos and then get
Yes,
infections and
piercings.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Not good.
Yeah,
One parent.
we try to
had-
scare them.
Done.
Let them know
Immediately.
that anything that is their responsibility.
Yeah, what's out of bounds type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Have
we,
that conversation with your child.
right, and we try to do that too at the beginning when we do the kickoff meeting, but it's been so wonky because of COVID and because of Zooming and some families not, and then people, you know, people signing up because, you know, later, because we wanna have a good number of students. So at that meeting, which is, right now I have it planned for January 16th, we'll see, depending on the sporting schedule, but January 16th, and that'll be, you know, please, this is mandatory, please be there, if not, we need to talk. But where we lay out, like, what are the main roles, what do you need, you know, what is the medical form if you haven't done so, make sure I have a copy of your passport, front page and back page, because if your child loses their passport, if I have the front and the back page, it's gonna be way easier to replace it. And just all the little niches, like where we're gonna stay, and, you know, I get all the parents' phone numbers, but I also give out my number to all the students, and the students give me their numbers, enrich their numbers, and we also do a Facebook page. So the kid, he runs it. I just take pictures, and he takes pictures, and so because the kids won't call their parents, and the parents are like, where's my kid? But they can see him on the video. Hey, there they are ziplining. So they're alive, yay! So yeah, we try to do as much as we can to support the families with that.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming
Hey, if you guys have any
tonight.
questions, please let us know. Need that back in my classroom.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi guys, thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
having
very
me.
much.
Have a
Oh,
great, gosh, it was a pleasure.
Okay, we're gonna move on to new business. One, certified staff. Could I have a motion for A through H? Maybe Mr. Nodine, and a second by Mrs. Allen. There was a late change. Everybody had a chance to look at that.
Yes, would it have been highlighted at M4 that?
Yeah, it should have been on B. The stipend amount was corrected.
Okay. Thank
It was just a typo. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry?
you taking a through H or A through P?
Oh, there's more.
you.
Hold on.
I didn't know the second.
Mr. McDonald, good thing you came tonight. Okay, Mr. Nodine, could we possibly amend your
Absolutely.
motion to accept A through P? Thank you, Mrs. Allen. For the second?
I do
So
think
there's a
there needs
couple.
to be a correction though. Item F should belong down to the classified staff section, not certified staff.
I would have to agree with that. So F would be the appointment of grant program aides, monitors, and building secretaries.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that should actually become E2L. That's all right? Mr. Nonine, once again, thank you. Mrs. Allen? Okay. Questions on E1, A through E, G through P?
I looked at it, just flipped on the page and, JV basketball, girls JV basketball, where are we at with that? I don't see a varsity basketball.
So I believe that, are you looking at N?
And, yes, excuse
I
me.
believe that, that position was changed from a varsity coach to a JV coach.
Right.
Because I think if you look down at, E8, yeah, Dr. Macaluso could probably share some insight on that.
Can you clarify?
Yes. In regards to the girls' basketball program, there was at one time wanting to just do the JV program 9 through 11 and have one student merge with a neighboring school. Recent numbers, we have enough for 8 for varsity program and 10 for JV program. So that's why it's kind of appointing JV coach. One coach resigned. The previous JV girls coach resigned. So I guess I would look at the last page of approval that says combined sports team girls varsity basketball. If you were going to propose a merger with the neighboring school for one student, a senior, to go over to play, and then have a 9 through 11 JV program with 18, 17 with the other one going over. What we did is I set up, right now we could have 8 at the varsity level and 10 at the JV level with the way the athletes signed up. We have 1 senior and 4 juniors that were interested in playing varsity, along with 2 freshmen. Let me just double check. Did I count my numbers right in my head? And 4 juniors, 1 senior, well, 1 sophomore as well. So that would be the varsity program that they signed up for, and then we would still have 10 for JV program. So I'm asking the board if you want to merge and have the senior go off to a neighboring school and merge that way, and have 9 through 11 with 17 players, or if you want to keep it the way it is with having a girls varsity program and a girls JV program.
So I'm just gonna ask if we could,
I think that was written up kind of.
No, that's okay, but I'm gonna ask for an amendment to the motion again, but if we could just, could we remove N so that we could vote on the rest of this, because this kind of carries over to E8, which we actually don't have a motion on the floor for yet. Does that sound all right? So,
Thank you.
no, thank you for the explanation. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Hey, Mr. No-Dye. What do you feel about amending your motion to removing N? That'd be all right. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Allen? Okay.
Just gonna hold on to.
We'll have that, if that's all right, to the end. Okay, so the motion on the floor, hopefully for the last time, is E1, A through E, G through M, O, and P. Sorry. Stop laughing at me. Any questions on those? Okay. Mr. McDonald?
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Nodine. Mrs. Bingham,
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan,
Yes.
passes 7-0.
Holy moly, that was a lot. Okay, moving on. We'll come back to N once we have a discussion a little bit later here. Okay, so E2 classified staff. I'm now looking for a motion for A through C and F through the new L, Mr. McDonald. I was told just before the meeting here that D and E are actually being removed because they're not necessary anymore. So if you could remove those, Mrs. Damon, thank you. In a second, Mrs. Bliss.
I was looking at, you said D and E or?
D, yeah, D is a David, E is an Edward. There's just not gonna be a swap in that position at this time. She'll be staying in her current position. So we're just gonna remove those.
Okay.
Mr. McDonald, do you have that down?
I do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions?
Group one's through I, right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because I, no, through L.
that's why it says L, but I read it as an I.
Oh,
So
okay. I'm like, wait a minute.
We added an L.
Were we gonna add?
We brought
We
F
added
from certified staff, and we're gonna make that the new L,
Not I.
not I. Please use capital letters so everyone can tell. Any other questions? Mr. McDonald?
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mr. Nodine,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes,
Passes 7-0.
thank you. Is it because it's your first night? What is going on today? So you have another resolution for a teaching assistant in your folder. It's labeled E2L. Not anymore. Because I think that's an L unless it's a,
Looks like an I.
Looks like
oh,
a-
never mind.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. Wow.
It's just a revision.
It's getting messy up here. Okay, we can just move on. See, capital letters, it always works. Okay, we're gonna move on to E3, the CSE and CPSE recommendations. Could I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Dingman, second by Mrs. Bliss. Any questions on these? Clarifications? All in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. E4, declaration of surplus property. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Nodine, second by Mrs. Allen. Questions?
I did have a question. The bus that we are surplusing, obviously it must be old. Do we know like what year, how many miles or anything like that?
I don't.
We're on,
Maybe that's on the-
147, it's an older bus.
oh yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's old. So, I don't know if it's possible just to get that information, just to know.
Other questions? When you're ready, sir.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mr. Nodine, Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. E5, adoption of the tax collector's report for 22-23. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Allen, second by Mr. Dates. Any questions? Okay, when you're ready.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Nodine. Yes. Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yep.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, E6, the approval of the senior class trip. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Dingman, second by Mrs. Bliss. This is exciting that they're going somewhere this year.
Yeah.
Am I the only one?
No, it's-
It's great. Any questions? I don't think Mrs. Zuck is here, right? So, okay, so probably Mrs. Hinman can answer anything if we have any questions. You're doing the whale watching on this?
Yeah, I get to go on this one, I'm excited.
Oh, exciting. That's great.
I think you did sign up, I'm looking, you get like a period of meeting and sign up, and I hope that,
Yeah, she's really organized. She's done this trip for a few years,
Yeah.
so she's got it.
It's great, they'll get to go.
How do we ensure to make sure that all students have an opportunity to go? If somebody's not signing up, does an individual approach them to ask why, to see what kind of assistance they need?
So yes, Mrs. Zuck has money set aside, and she does reach out to the seniors that choose not to go and just see if it's an interesting or if it's a financial, and there is money set aside for that
Thank
typically.
you so much.
Absolutely.
good.
Other questions? When you're ready.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mr. Novak? Yes. Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, E7, approval of the 2022-23 district goals. Thank you, Mrs. Allen, in a second. Thank you, Mr. Nordine. I feel like we went over a lot of language last time, so I'm pretty confident that we're all okay, ready to vote.
I think this sounds great.
Okay, when you're ready, sir.
Mr. Novak? Yes. Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Dates?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, E8, this is an approval for a 22-23 combined sports team for girls varsity basketball. Could I have a motion, please, to discuss? Thank you, Mrs. Bliss. Second by Mrs. Kaiser. Okay, so before we get started, I think that now is okay to explain that
Okay,
if
sorry.
whatever, no, you're, not you, I'm saying I'll explain that whatever decision is made on this particular motion, then we'll need to go back and make the adjustment to N from the first E1 section. Obviously, if the girls varsity team is combined with a neighboring district, we no longer need to pay for a varsity coach here. And we have accepted a resignation from the current, or was current JV coach for girls basketball. So that position, until we refill it, is vacant. If you remember correctly, we appointed these winter sports several months ago. So we just need to make the adjustments to those depending on how this is decided. So have that discussion about combining girls varsity.
Well,
Junior varsity.
It should
Oh,
also
come on.
Yeah.
continue,
Yeah.
carry the numbers. I mean, that's the latest, greatest numbers.
That is the latest information from today.
Mhm.
So there's, right now, there's 8 that can play varsity, 10 that can play JV.
Correct.
So I think I'm confused that, I mean, being that there's a resolution here to combine the teams, I guess it was my understanding with the last meeting, we were gonna go with 2 teams.
Correct.
So then I saw this on the agenda, I'm like, oh, something must not have worked out, we're combining. But now I'm hearing that maybe we're not,
What
or
happened,
we're still gonna decide.
what happened at the last board meeting was the neighboring school district said they had no opportunities to merge, if I'm correct. And we didn't have a lot of people signing up now that we're into the season. And I just took the last sign up today that there are now 8 that want to play varsity. Yeah, 1 senior, 4 juniors, which are age appropriate, and then the sophomore and 2 freshmen. And then we have 2 sophomores on the JV that have signed up, 3 8th graders, and the rest of the team would be freshmen.
Do
So
we
it-
have a varsity coach?
We do currently have a varsity coach that was hired prior to me coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we would have to hire out for a JV coach if you went varsity JV. At the time that the JV program was discussed, prior to me, I guess there wasn't a lot of numbers at the varsity level. So I gave the student athletes an opportunity to sign up to see if there was more interest.
I think that those 2 positions were filled with the coaches from the year before, with the hope that there would be 2 teams, which we've done in the past, and then eliminated a coaching position if necessary, or I think sometimes they've co-coached or one has volunteered to help or something like that.
So out of this, would we agree that there's enough persons, enough girls to field 2 teams? Because if we're sending only 1 to North Rose, that's an awfully big JV team.
That would be 17
And
for
that
an
would be,
nine
you
to
know,
11.
when you're playing 5 to
But you
5.
have 8th graders that are moved up, why wouldn't they just stay on a modified team, right?
The modified season doesn't start until January, and I believe these modified players have played with the summer program. and they pass the APP classification to participate at the JV level. So their skill is also strong enough to play at the JV level. Even if you took them off the JV program, the numbers would be low. You would have 7.
Could you read those numbers again? So let's start with varsity, by grade level.
Yeah. There's 8 for the varsity program. There's 1 senior, 4 juniors, 1 sophomore, and 2 freshmen that have signed up. And for JV basketball, there is 10 total. There is 1 sophomore. Oh, sorry, 2 sophomores, 5 freshmen, and 3 8th graders. And with the merger, I know you folks may be familiar with it, is your board would have to accept it. The neighboring district would have to accept the merger, and then it would have to be approved through Section 5 as well.
Have all of these players started practicing?
The season began on Monday.
I believe 1 just signed up. I would have to be honest, look through the family ID. I believe almost everyone was eligible through the family ID in regards to that. And there's 1 athlete that is not eligible for different reasons on the JV program, so that would bring them to 9.
So
But I'm
They
sure
would
that
not be
could
eligible
change.
the entire season.
Pardon?
But they're not eligible now, though, so.
if we were to move forward with the 2 separate teams, which the numbers seem to support, I'm confused about the coaching, because the person that we're looking to appoint for the JV coach is who is also appointed as the varsity coach.
Currently, that person would stay as the varsity coach, and then we would have to find a JV coach. That proposal was if it was a 9 through 11 JV program, with that senior merging with the neighboring district.
Okay, so the resolutions that we have with this board packet are supporting the model of merging.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So we discussed this in the past, and if the decision by the athletics department was to field a varsity and a JV team, there is no resolution for the board. We had already appointed coaches, that's pretty much where we stop. So, but a merger has to be approved, and then obviously a resignation from a coach and a change in a coach's status as far as what team they would be coaching would need to be approved. So that's why you're seeing the additional resolutions on this packet.
But the opportunity is to give as many kids, and you said the number of support, give as many kids the opportunity to be involved in the program, be part of the basketball program, and develop the program. And we've had many times in the past 8th graders that had the accelerated skills to go up as they were at the certain level of skills for the JV and certain for the varsity level if they pass that. And it also allows our senior, if that's a senior going over there, to stay in her school-based uniform, her school uniform that she's been part of in the past.
Dr. Macalusa, do you mind you signed the resolution, do you mind sharing your thoughts with us about, because obviously we were under the impression that there was a different direction, a couple of weeks ago, so.
Can I ask a question first, though? Sure. Did we schedule varsity games? Have they already been scheduled, or is this something that you're gonna have to piecemeal together?
Prior, I did inform the league that we were not gonna have a varsity program, so we canceled the varsity schedule. However, if we stay varsity and JV, all I do is inform the section and the league, and any district or school that has filled that spot and taken the league, they would have to take our league games on. So they might have to change their schedule, but correct me if I'm wrong, they have to take the
They'd have to
league
drop their
schedule.
non-league games if they backfilled that one.
Yeah, if they backfilled them with non-league games, they would have to take our league games on.
So at this time, we've already started the season and we don't have any varsity games scheduled.
All I have to do is contact Wayne County and the section tomorrow, and I'll let them tell them that we do now have a varsity program, and they would open those back up.
As of this moment, though, I heard a yes without you saying that. We don't have any varsity games scheduled.
Not on our
Today.
school at this time.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I?
But that's because of the configuration that we went in with, but that can be altered.
Do you mind offering your thoughts?
Sure.
Stephanie has some.
I always go to what's best for kids, and I think if we can field 2 healthy competitive teams here in Red Creek, then I would recommend that that's what you would do.
Would you say having 8 kids, though, is a healthy team?
I'm not a basketball coach, so I don't know. I mean, it certainly could be.
Yeah.
It depends on the kids.
I have a question because I think this came up in our last meeting, that we had heard or under the impression that our varsity eligible players would not be able to necessarily, their skill level was not at that of a varsity team. Is that correct?
That's the information I got. I haven't seen
Okay.
practice at all, to be honest.
Okay.
And to answer your question about is 8 enough, I did have a coach from Section 5 reach out. They have 7 players on their varsity team. So as long as everyone stays healthy and eligible, which I think that's a focus for any coach to encourage eligibility and taking care of themselves.
And is there also opportunity for movement within the season if somebody on the JV team shows a skill set that they could potentially move up, they would have the opportunity mid-season?
Yes.
Okay.
I personally think the opportunity of playing time is huge. You know, if you put all those students on one team, you know, the majority of that playing time is gonna go to 5 or 6 of those kids.
You don't get more minutes. 'Cause
You will get a lot more minutes, a lot more experience, you're gonna develop as an athlete by being on the 2 different teams. That's my opinion.
So to move forward with this, does that mean we either do nothing and move forward with the JV and varsity and get rid of these resolutions? Like, where does this leave us?
So it would, if we would vote no, for both of them, because that would make the current JV coach
There would be an opening. for-
still right, would still remain the varsity coach, and there would be no agreement for a merger.
Actually, Kate could within that, because we tabled that, and
Yep.
we could amend that if we thought that if we so inclined to want parts of varsity, we could amend that.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, hasn't resigned from the varsity coach yet.
Right, but he's looking to be appointed to it, it could just,
Oh, you mean you're saying if he didn't want, if he wanted?
Yes,
He resigned in
he,
September.
Resigned, mid-September, or end of September.
So that has nothing to do with what's at hand now. Could you just clarify though what's been communicated with North Rose Wolcott at this point?
My understanding is what we did prior, and I heard that there was no merger opportunity. So I have not reached out to the neighboring district wouldn't want to reach out until after it was approved through you folks.
But I mean, so they're aware of the fact that it's on our agenda tonight, I would assume, if we've asked if there's an opportunity, or no, we have not. I don't know how it
They
works,
have not,
so.
but they have been contacted by.
So they're aware of the potential of a merger, but, okay.
We've
But
been
there
given
hasn't
a
been-
verbal.
A verbal,
that they
okay,
would, yes.
okay.
Yeah, that they would take the student.
It seems very
muddied.
messy to me.
Yep, so again, what happens with the approval of P, we would be in a position where we would need to find a replacement then.
Correct.
Or would we need to find a varsity coach? Either way, we need to find a coach, whether it's for JV or varsity.
Right.
Is the coach who is right now varsity have the opportunity to slide into the JV role if that's what they want, or?
I wouldn't have a problem with that, I believe, would that
I just
have
don't
to
know how that works.
be, would that have to be board approved in regards to changing of an assignment?
You've approved it before.
If you move to JV though, is what she's
Yes,
saying.
right, yeah.
So he would just have to be approved of the new stipend.
Right, but presently he was approved it.
Well,
He's currently approved to add the varsity
Yeah.
coach.
So if he stayed in that role, there wouldn't be any.
but right now, N is to appoint as the JV.
Right. So
That was
would-
dependent on,
Depending on the resolution.
Okay.
the eight on the third page, the approval of the merger or not.
Okay.
So if we don't approve the merger, then we just vote no on the JV appointment?
Right.
And if we have a vacancy in one of those coaching positions, would that be that the varsity coach acts as the coach of all players until we appoint a new coach? Or how is,
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
This is the
Or vice
first
versa.
few days of training. Yep, that's right.
Some of this discussion was prior to me, so that's why I think there's why a conflict or confusion on this. Things that have been said over the summer in regards to, we're only gonna have a JV program 9 through 11, and then we open it up for everyone to sign up, and numbers changed.
so are we gonna move forward with, making a decision on 8?
I think, so that's the motion on the floor right now.
That's what sounds good now.
Weren't we under the impression that that's not what the student and the parents wanted? They wanted the student to play here if possible.
I think, but our board packet had some different information given after that fact.
From last meeting.
From the time that we spoke last month to this month, our board packet had some other information, had some emails.
Okay, I think, my only concern at this point, honestly, is timing. Like, to me, this seems
It's terrible.
messy. And, you know, Mr. Dates, you have offered, several times about, you know, how early this stuff is supposed to be done, in whatever direction you've decided. And, so I think that that's why, and I will say I was very set on us making a decision by November 4th, because that would have been a very clean transition if there were a necessary merger, before the season had started. So I think that whatever decision we move forward, we need a much, we need to clean this up a little earlier, just so that things aren't hanging out here for so long. So, because, you know, now after
There's a
after
bit
the
of a
season
void
is,
that.
yeah, transition is hard, I think.
But what's best for kids?
Yeah, well, I'm a little concerned about being able to find another coach. That's my
I'm with
first
you.
thought.
I'm concerned about that as well.
I
No,
don't
what
think
happens
that'll
if
be
we
a
can't?
problem. I don't think that should be a problem.
Because the season started on Monday, we don't have a coach today.
And
So
what
do you
they're
think
making-
tomorrow?
If we move forward with this, with a JV and a varsity team, and we don't meet again until December, what is it, 7th? Will there be a game before that?
I think
Sure.
right now.
There's gonna be
The current
scrimmages.
JV has a game on the 22nd.
Yeah.
So if we
Oh, goodness.
wouldn't have an
Yeah.
approved coach,
Well, but you can approve ahead of time as a superintendent, prior to, you can name a person in the place before it comes to, doesn't have to wait for our board.
Planning board, correct?
Doesn't have to wait for our.
Right.
So it's the 16th. How confident are we, though, that we'll have a coach within a week? That's, you know, that's concerning to me.
I do agree that 2 teams is probably best for the students and the number of students that are interested. I also agree this is super messy, and I also agree I'm concerned about being able to find a coach.
Ms. Katie, do you have candidates for a coach, either varsity or JV?
Currently, I do not. I could fill the void if need be until a coach was appointed.
are you able to do that as the AD, act as both?
I know other ADs that do coach, I believe you can, yes.
Odd question, but if there were a merger between the two teams, is the typical practice to only merge a senior? If the concern, and I'm only saying this, if the concern that the varsity was light, or that we didn't want all these 8th graders to be moving up, which, I'm not a coach, so whatever you decide. But if there were, let's say 5, even 6 or 7, whatever it was, is it typically just seniors that we merge with, or we would give this opportunity for any of those students to play at the varsity level at North Rose Wolcott? Or does it matter, like?
My understanding from the section and from the league is you only want to merge if you cannot provide a program. They've done mergers at modified level, JV level, and varsity level athletics, just so the kid has an opportunity. Like, didn't we merge with volleyball?
We don't have a
In the fall,
volleyball program.
yeah, we merged one athlete to do that and also one swimmer, so they would have the opportunity, because we didn't provide those opportunities here.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's wherever the void is, but it's also just to make sure that if we can't provide that programming, that somewhere in a different school, we can provide programming. I mean, when, our wrestling coaches here, they just unmerged with Hannibal because they have enough numbers to support a program. This was the first year that they unmerged with Hannibal, because now we can provide the proper programming for that as well.
Congratulations.
So it's, it goes both ways where you merge
But
and
so,
unmerge.
but what I mean is, if this merger was to pass, would we also offer that to the 4 11th graders?
No, I don't think, no,
Because they're eligible to play on JV.
Yes, you can.
So there's no opportunity for them to play at the varsity level at North Rose Wolcott?
I haven't reached out in that regard. I would be very surprised if they would take 5 players.
We are in fact inviting an entire team to North Rose Wolcott.
I'm just asking if it's a
Yeah, no.
possibility.
You're fielding a team.
Yeah, I don't know NRW's numbers, so I can't answer that.
Right.
There was one time during the league that you had North Rose Wolcott to merge with another team, and then we would have that one senior go there. But they were still filling out numbers, as far as I know.
Mhm.
So it's a little unique situation of merging 2 schools together and merging 3 schools together.
I only ask because I think, not that that I think the numbers can't field the teams or anything like that, but basketball's a long season.
It is.
And eligibility is always an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And Christmas-itis or whatever you wanna call it. And so when I look at a team of 8 on varsity and I think, only one has senioritis, maybe they'll be all right. I think, I wonder if that's something that they could be strong with through the whole season. So that's the reason that I asked if there was something where maybe your 2 freshmen decided to play on JV, could we offer it to all of the students, or how that worked? So thank you for answering my question.
It's very feasible to provide a good, strong basketball program with 8. Some teams that go to the state finals only have 7 or 8 players on their team.
Yeah, I've seen that in my experience where
I
there
do
are
that.
teams of 7 or 8. I watched a team one time of 6 because somebody was injured. They made it do until somebody got healthy.
Do we vote?
Kate's thinking.
Any other, yeah, I got one more. Was the question ever brought up to just field the varsity team and move your freshmen and your 8th graders to modified?
I believe it wasn't scheduled. I believe this is about the JV that was scheduled.
I'm sorry.
The JV games were scheduled.
Oh, okay, so this was now just breaking out.
And you can back out the JV games at this point?
But that would also be sending 10 kids to modified.
And we don't
know, you have a JV.
No, if we didn't have a JV, I mean, if you were at that ability, that it looks like there's 2 freshmen that were, maybe you had your 2 10th graders would play varsity. That, I'm just asking if we consider
could do-
possibly just fielding a varsity
A
team
modified and a varsity.
as opposed to a I'm just wondering if we.
Well, similar to soccer, you could do 7, 8, and 9 modified. However, I don't know the girls' modified numbers yet because their season doesn't start until January 3rd.
Okay.
And that's also what's called a modified A program when you go 79. And you want to hope that other schools are also fielding a 79, because it can become an issue if somebody's only fielding 7th graders, you've got some 9th graders on there. Is it disproportionate in terms of what you got?
Do they still allow them to compete against each other?
They do, but then there's some guidelines even on that, for that. So the opportunity for more kids to play, okay, from my experience, if we field the 3 teams, more kids will have the opportunity to play. And that, I mean, we're going to develop a program.
Other questions? When you're ready.
Which is
Never mind.
on the table right now? Sorry.
Don't you write anything down?
Well,
E8 is the motion on the floor.
Okay.
Not 9, not 7. Mr. McDonald.
Mrs. Bliss.
No.
No.
Mrs. Allen.
No.
Mrs. Damon.
I'll say yes.
Mr. Dates.
No.
Mrs. Kaiser.
Abstain.
Mr. Nodine.
No.
Mrs. Madigan.
I'm gonna abstain.
4 no, 1 yes, 2 abstain. It's not passed.
Okay, then I don't even know what to do with them then.
Bill, I'm sorry, can you read that one more time? What were the final?
Yes.
Sorry.
It was 1 yes, 4 no, 2 abstain.
Thank you very much.
We're not combining the sports teams, it's not a board decision anymore, correct?
It is actually still a board decision if the position is changed, because the stipend changed. So I guess I'm gonna ask Mrs. Katie if we could pull that for now until there's a decision made on the coaches. He still sits as the varsity coach, so it's not like he can't be involved.
Correct.
But if we could pull from making a decision
That
until
was
you have
only in
that
case
discussion.
if the resolution.
Well, I know there was a question on the floor about whether he would possibly coach the other team.
Yep.
So if that change needs to be made, could you bring us back a resolution for that?
I can discuss that with what position.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion for E, stay with me, 1N to be tabled. Mrs. Allen, and a second by Mrs. Bliss. Okay, we're on 9 now, Joe. E9, approval of a dual participation contract. Can I have a motion, please? Mrs. Bliss, second, and Mr. Dates. There's got to be questions, so let me hear it.
What is this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this to do with basketball?
No, this has to do with, one student athlete during one season wants to play 2 different sports within Red Creek. For example, we have, some folks interested in wrestling and basketball, and also in, basketball and indoor track. They want to have the opportunity to participate in both. And what happens with the primary, they have to pick a primary, their first choice, and their dedication to that sport is top priority. They have to be there 100% of the time in games and practices. And then the second sport that they choose is their secondary. And if they're not at their primary, say it's wrestling, if they're not at wrestling, they have to be at their other choice of basketball or vice versa. So they're basically playing, I would view it as they're playing a full sport and a half or 3/4 of it. What happens is you cannot change an athletic event to accommodate that dual participant for anything, either through the regular season or through sectionals and state playoff.
How many students do we have looking to do this?
I currently have 3. That 2 wanted to wrestle and play basketball, and 1 wants to do indoor track and play basketball.
Are you sure that indoor track is allowed for dual participation?
The Section 5 and Wayne League has approved all all sports for dual participation, is my
You
understanding.
can't do it in Section 3.
So,
Right, the sections have to approve that.
Yep, Section 5 has approved
The
dual.
section does, then the leagues decide
Mhm.
from there whether to approve it. And this was been, and I only say it now as an official, because we have a lot of kids that are track athletes that also do one of the other sports. So sometimes they're at the track and for indoor, and other times you don't see them, it's because they had that basketball that they had to be at.
I'll say, it's my understanding from the research that I did in talking to the Section 5 executive director that there's no sport that you can't do, is my understanding. Like, so each section has different guidelines.
so with the primary sport, I just wanna make sure I'm understanding the layout. So, let's say, once we get to where we're competing, you've got, say, basketball on Monday and wrestling on Tuesday, basketball on Wednesday. So you got basketball game on Monday, and then basketball practice on Tuesday, but a wrestling meet on Tuesday. But they leave for the meet at 4:30. The practice doesn't get done until 5.
I had the same questions, but not nearly the specifics that Jolene's giving you, but I'm all about the bus thing,
So like
so.
how does it work for that student? Like, do they miss the meet because of the half hour of practice they're gonna miss?
What the student does is they are supposed to give technically a month in advance of their practice and game schedules to both coaches. And a coach could say, I understand that you have a meet, you can meet at this time and just do 45 minutes of my practice. So that's an open discussion that the coaches would have with that dual participant.
Are the coaches all aware of this situation?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
It's just something new that has.
Yeah, I was gonna, like, what, I don't mean to be so blunt, but like, what's the point, like, what's the purpose of this?
Probably just to do more, get more experience, see what they like.
You know, being more
Try
involved
something.
in your athletic programs in school and, you know,
There was-
they have 2 different skill sets. There might be a very good wrestler and a very good basketball player, indoor track person as well.
Are any of these potential dual participants hinging the number of students we need for a program?
That's a great question.
So nobody wants to wrestle too, and that's how we got unmerged, or?
Right.
No,
That-
there were numbers for wrestling.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean,
It
we're not
wasn't
doing
very
this to field
No, no,
the
no.
programs, they just want to be
They just
involved
want to
in
be
more than
involved,
one
yes,
sport.
Yes, not to field the program, just to be involved.
Is this
Okay.
girls basketball or boys basketball?
Boys basketball.
For both the wrestling and obviously the wrestling, but the indoor track?
It's- you don't go back a few years, and this opportunity didn't exist.
Okay.
And from the state level, they saw that what was happening also, there were programs that are losing numbers. And so this was one of the states that had to approve this, to give the opportunity across the state of dual participation with guidelines, obviously, the guidelines to it, because they have to meet all the practice requirements and that kind of stuff. But they saw that programs were falling away, and this was one answer to how to keep programs going, because across the state, a lot of population has dropped, especially in small schools. So how do you still allow for an opportunity for a program to exist? So they gave this opportunity to student athletes.
That was another question I actually thought of. So when the season first starts, they're practicing every day to get enough practices in to compete. How feasible is it for them to get enough practices in for both sports to actually get to a point where they can compete in both sports?
You need to wrestling is you need 10 practices of just wrestling in order to compete in a match. And for basketball, you need 6 practices of just basketball. So you have to meet that 10 practice schedule for wrestling. And then separately your 6 practices for basketball in order to compete in any athletic event between the 2 sports.
Well, and on some days, there's opportunities where they could attend both, because I believe sometimes basketball practice is late.
Are there any limitations to the amount of time a student can spend in one day? I feel like I heard that somewhere, like for the betterment of the student, like they shouldn't necessarily go to school all day long and then go to
Practice or whatever.
And
I would say
there's any limitations on that.
dual participation is very time consuming, and it's a huge challenge for student athletes and families, if you will. Because they're split and they're looked as 2 different, they're allowed to do those double practices, if you will, call them that. Like you suggested, the early practice and the later practice.
Right.
I would imagine it's a lot on the student athlete's body, because if
They're
you
making that choice.
wrestle one of the days, and then the next day there's a basketball game, there's no time in between to recover.
They're signing up for the challenge.
Yeah, I
And
think
you look, if you think about it, you also have students who do a regular sport and then dance outside of school or play rec league or are on 3 soccer leagues. Power to them, I guess.
I think it's great that there's an opportunity. I think that we have to, I'm
If they
assuming
can
that.
stay eligible, keep their studies up.
I was just
and
gonna say, I'm
participate,
assuming
both,
there's
I mean,
gonna
good
need
for
to
them.
be, more support towards these students, more support towards the coaches, so they have this ability to talk to each other and work together. Because I have to say, Jolene just made that point to think that, who has the more practices, wrestling?
Wrestling has 10.
Right, so if this student went to wrestling for 10 straight practices, but then can't go for 6 days because he's gotta go to basketball, that's gotta throw a kink in both coaches' schedules. And so I just think that we should be cognizant of that as
But
we
I
move
think, if
forward.
I'm understanding it correctly, whatever sport they pick for their number 1 sport, so say it's wrestling, they would go to wrestling practice every day, and if the basketball practice happened to be at a different time, then they could also go to basketball, but they couldn't miss wrestling to go to basketball.
She was just saying though, unless they get those 6 basketball practices in, they could never compete anyway. So they'd have to figure out a time to,
Right.
you know what I mean, to
Right.
have both in there.
Our concern is just whether or not we want to allow them to try to work that out. I think that's our decision on the board.
Good point.
And what happens is they will go to that wrestling, that's your primary, get their full practice, and then they go 45 minutes of basketball.
Right.
You know, and because that could qualify as a practice, you know, for the requirements to that. So, yeah, there's a lot of demand, but I've seen some kids do very well.
I was gonna say, if they're up to the challenge.
So 3 students for the winter sports, and if there's other students in the spring, it'll be revisited.
Right now, I do have 3 students, so if this is passed and more students want to do it, we've opened the opportunity for them to do that.
Is this only the varsity level?
I believe so.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was.
I will double check on that, I'm not certain.
I believe it.
I believe it's just varsity.
Because that's all that I ever had as varsity level kids. But
What's up?
May I speak?
Sure.
One of the students is a varsity wrestler, they're trying to pull him down to JV basketball. The other student is a varsity basketball player, he wants to come over and do wrestling, he's a senior. That was the one that I was more interested in having, just to give him the opportunity. He wanted to actually do some off-season wrestling this year, but had a hernia, so he couldn't do anything. So he just wants to try it out before he graduates to see if it was something he could enjoy, would enjoy type of thing. I do think eligibility will come into play in this if it is passed, because one of the students that they're interested in moving has had problems in the past with his eligibility, so it will be something that obviously have to be visited. It's also my understanding that for practices, whoever the primary sport is, that's the one they go to practice with. If there is a game, then there is no wrestling practice before the game. If there is a wrestling match, there is no basketball practice before the wrestling match, so that they're fresh when they go to the event. If there is, like right now, it's working where it is a possibility because the schedules are flip-flopping, because one week the girls have the gym early and the next week the boys have the gym early, so they flip-flop back and forth. So it's making it so like a lot of practices can happen because it's just practices right now. Once it gets into gameplay, then it gets a little more crazy because a lot of the wrestling matches will be on Tuesday, Thursday once they're scheduled. And then the basketball games are on Monday, Wednesday, sometimes Friday, depending on how they're scheduled. A lot of the wrestling tournaments are kind of the bulk of the season. They're on Saturdays. And then there's things where you cannot compete more than 6 days a week.
Right.
So it eliminates Sunday, so there's a day of rest in the middle of that. But some of these kids still go play travel baseball, travel soccer, like there's other stuff they're doing even on top of this. So just something.
Well, and
that-
they're not bound to this all season. Say they do
Yes.
3 weeks of this and it.
They're technically not
Once
for
they
the whole
said yes,
season.
for the entire season, they can't quit either sport, according to.
The reason why I asked about the varsity was because if there's a varsity wrestling program, but let's say that there's only a JV basketball, or they wanna play at the JV level, typically a varsity player would have to play a varsity sport. Can they drop?
Just for a second, in regards to the varsity JV student, I did forget about the different levels on that, so I will double check it.
I'm just wondering, is that normally, we would say, okay, well, this is a varsity player, so they would go to varsity basketball, but let's say they're only in 10th grade and they wrestle varsity, but they want to play on the JV basketball team, is that allowed?
That's what I did forget that there was that, I will look into it,
Okay.
a section on that.
Okay.
So if we approve this, then she just has to implement it by fact checking that
That
other
the
answer
JV varsity
and
thing,
then implement
yes.
it correctly.
What's that, Jolene?
I would think that the individual sport would assess what level.
I just didn't know if you could drop,
Yeah,
like
it's
how
just
we
indoor.
can't have a senior playing JV.
And again, with indoor, just similar to wrestling, is indoor has, meets on Saturdays or Friday nights. So there's flexibility within that schedule.
Other questions? McDonald?
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mr. Dates,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Nodak,
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yep.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Any views on? You're up. Okay, so, actually, the scholarship, information for F1 was actually in our packet last time, so it's in there now, so we can take a look at that. I think everybody looked at it last time, but if there's any questions, let us know.
The only question I had about it is and maybe it's just in the agenda, it's calling it a donation, but I don't see it as an actual donation. Aren't these scholarships that are paid? Like, I don't think the
I
district.
think the wording is wrong, which is why we're not voting on it.
Okay.
So I think that maybe
Okay.
that needs to be amended to remove the word donation, and it's more of a FYI that there's a scholarship
There's a
available.
scholarship up there, and, yeah, okay.
And then this tax collection report, I believe, is what you handed me, Mr. McDonald?
It is, what I handed you was the uncollected amount.
Okay, so
It'll be re-levied to the
we'll
counties.
sign off on that. Did you have anything, sir? Sorry.
You have the reports from the administrators. I just want to say this has been a great experience so far. Everybody's been very welcoming. And I very much appreciate that and the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions before we move into executive for?
Well,
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
Because Ben's here thinking, because I picked this up too over, when I was over at the Dago game. Girls wrestling. Not to be able to talk a lot about athletics, right?
I'm on the spot tonight, aren't I?
Yeah. But I know the effort is to get a separate girls wrestling program as opposed to a co-ed program. What do you-
Correct. I tried to look through the agenda on that. I don't know if it was missed on that in regards to a female wrestling team. A female wrestling team is a team of one. Currently, we have 3 females that want to participate in just a female wrestling program. For us, we would be the 4th school within Section 5 that would have a female wrestling program. There might be some different matches, there might be different times for sectionals and whatnot. That's to be.
Is it something that needs to be approved
Well,
by the board?
So from what I understand, there was no actual there should have been a board resolution, cause my computer died, but I'm looking really quick.
I
We
know
don't have a
it was
code.
crazy with athletics and pushing things forward. It was part of the email.
I do see that. If you give me just 1 second.
So we appointed a varsity wrestling coach, so would that fall under the wrestling?
From what I understand, Mr. Copel would also be coaching that team, is that correct?
I have no problem doing it.
Similar to what Mr. Briggs does with his track.
So are there separate events where, like, on the same day though? So how do you?
Yeah.
As of right now, there are no separate events. In the future, there could be, so it could grow into something more than what it is.
Okay.
This is the fastest growing sport across the nation
Yeah.
and the fastest growing sport in New York State. With having Section 5 have 4 teams in it, we need one more section across the state, have 4 teams in it, and then we'll have a sectioned New York State champion per the girls that will wrestle in Albany at the same time the boys do. That's currently not the case. They need one more section to have it in order to have it across the board. As this happens, there are 6 events, if I'm not mistaken, that are happening right now that are just girls events. So the girls would go wrestle in those events against other girls, some of them regional, some of them state tournaments, and so on and so forth. It will, as it keeps growing, it will turn into individual dual meets that they would go to. But as of right now, like the idea is kind of get it presented. And I'm telling you, the girls stare at the girls that are in the room right now with curiosity. The girls that are on the track team, the basketball team, they're coming in, taking pictures of them, all that kind of stuff. They're very curious of like what's going on, what these girls are doing in there. There are the schools that we do participate against, like Red Jacket has a few girls. They don't have a girls team. Waterloo has a girls team. So when we have matches against them, I will reach out to those coaches to make sure we get exhibition matches if at all possible based on weight, because it's the way wrestling goes. It's an individual sport but still has a team aspect. So the girls, as long as there's somebody that is their weight, we can have matches that will meet up with them, and then they can still get experience. And then at the end of January, there's a state tournament where they can all go and get like a conglomeration of like everything that could happen going forward. And then if this keeps growing, they'll end up in Albany just like the boys.
Thank you.
And this is the 27th state that has adopted this, and it's still moving forward. It took a while for New York to catch up.
You mean with female wrestling or just in general?
Yes.
Female wrestling.
So I did question the exception for the resolution for this, and what Dr. Macaluso's secretary was told that this particular team only needs to be approved by Section 5 and does not require board approval for a team establishment because it's not a new program, it's just the other gender.
According to the information that I got through the Section 5 Women's Wrestling coordinator, that it needs board approval. I know there was a conflict, I heard about that today.
So we don't have a resolution,
Right.
which makes things tough. I guess I would say that, in my opinion, and feel free to voice if you don't agree, I would ask that if there could be some sort of exception that they could wrestle and compete with Mr. Popel as the coach at this point, and we could add it to the next board meeting to be retroactive. And then I would just also state that since he is already in the position of a varsity coach, that he would be able to do that.
So can I just ask for clarification?
Sure.
You're asking, you're gonna, because there wasn't a resolution on the table, you're gonna see if we can have a female wrestling program start now, because there are some matches that would come up, or some information that would come
Well,
up
they
prior to
would
the
wrestle
next.
exhibition matches. They wouldn't wrestle in like dual meet
Yeah.
matches, but they would get exhibition matches, and then there's an event at the end of January where they have to be a sanctioned team.
So some of those
to
matches,
compete.
sorry, some of those matches could occur before the next board meeting, correct?
December 7th.
Well, there's some that could actually
Yes.
happen our first match.
Yes.
So, which would be before December 7th?
Close.
I'd have to check. It's like
Yeah.
the 7th or 8th or something like
Okay.
that.
So I guess what I would say is if there was any possibility of you working through Section 5 to make it a pending approval of the board, as we already have a varsity
I will
team.
make adjustments, yeah.
And then we could approve that retroactively. I can say as a straw poll, I don't think anyone would be against giving the girls an opportunity, correct? No one would be against So I think we would be fine with that. If, I don't know, it looks like she was talking to someone at SODAS, and so maybe there was a miscommunication, and we can get that.
If you want me to record those emails.
Oh, no, I don't think that that's necessary, just, you know, whatever you need, we'll take care of on the 7th.
Can I ask Ben, and maybe it will help us, historic, how many girls have you had in the past few years anyway?
On the team?
Yeah.
0.
I'm sorry.
In the last 6 years, 0 girls.
Oh, really?
But I have probably 8 girls in the club working their way up through the ladder, through like the elementary, middle school levels that could potentially become. And we just moved up a 7th grader who is very competitive. She is one of the girls that's on the team. She passed the exam and everything with no problem.
And we also have a senior, and I'm not certain the other grade level off the top of my head. 10th grade, so we have, you know, modified JV varsity, if you will, but it's not quite
We
viewed
didn't
that
move
way
her
as
up to
wrestling.
make the
Yes.
team. The
Right.
team was already
Of a
made by a
varsity
different
team?
individual.
Yeah.
She is qualified to wrestle varsity if
So
a
I guess
match
I would
comes
say, what we would be pending or doing retroactively would be a varsity team.
Yeah.
And then if there needs to be resolution for other,
Okay.
layers of the female wrestling team, I, you know,
Yep.
could make accommodations for that as well. Anything else for tonight?
This came on about in the early 2000s, girls hockey took off this way, a very small way. And we got with that, I remember we had 4 or 5 schools, and then it's the league, you know, for girls.
You be coaching hockey as well?
Well, I've actually been coaching one of the girls that go to school at Waterloo, and she just competed at the national level and got 3rd place at the national level.
Wow.
Beating a girl from California who has been participating in this for the last 10 years, I think they've had girls wrestling.
That's
So
awesome.
the wrestling is improving and the girls are becoming very competitive.
I have a feeling that you're gonna be attracting some attention, Mr. Hopel, here in your team. Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Anything else for tonight? We'll take a motion and move into executive for particular personnel. Mrs. Kaiser and Mrs.